Welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about what many people find a controversial idea, that you will never love your job. And here's the thing, I don't know who you are. I don't know anything about your situation. Are you in school? Are you working? Are you unemployed? And essentially none of that matters to my claim. But beyond that, what I'd really like to convince you of is that it's not a bad thing. And in fact, it's a great thing to the extent that you recognize that reality and then you work to develop a rewarding life, understanding that as I want to say a fundamental law of the universe. Okay, I'm stretching there a bit, I get it. Now let me be clear here. What I am not saying is that some jobs aren't way better for you than other jobs, and that you will like some jobs far more than you will like other jobs. So how can I be so confident in my claim that you will never love your job? Well, over the last several years, I've run an experiment. I've asked hundreds of people the following question. If you woke up tomorrow and had $64 million in your bank account, how much longer would you continue going to your job? And the overwhelming majority said I would never go back, or I would go back for a few weeks or a month in order to transition my responsibilities so I didn't screw over my friends, employees, and co-workers. Okay, the $64 million question. What does it mean? Well, it doesn't mean that everybody hates their job. It doesn't mean that no one likes their job. In fact, many of the people who answered the question said, well, I like my job enough. It's pretty good. It's actually, as far as jobs go, it's great. But what it means is they're not doing it because they love it. They're doing it for the paycheck. Now, if you're like many people, you might be really bothered by that idea, by the fact that you'll never love your job. And the fact is, who wouldn't want to love their job? That whole idea, find a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life, it's really sexy and appealing. But if it's not true, it's important to be able to factor that into your thinking. It's important to be able to plan. It's important to be able to design and develop a life that maps with reality. Something maybe I should talk about a little bit is, what does it even mean when we say to love something? Well, in this particular case, we're talking about loving an activity. That activity happening to be your job. So I love different things. I love skiing. I love hiking. I love rock climbing. But I do them of my own free will. No one has to pay me to do them. That's what I mean by loving something. Now, the vast majority of us aren't going to continue to do our job unless somebody pays us to do it. That doesn't mean that some jobs aren't vastly better than other jobs. So, how do you go about identifying and getting the kind of job that you're going to like much more than most of the other jobs out there? So in 1971, Edward Deci and Richard Ryan published a paper describing something they called self-determination theory, or SDT for short. SDT has since become the most widely accepted theory of human well-being and human flourishing. SDT discusses what type of factors need to be in place for someone to feel like they're leading a rewarding life. And there were three components to that. The first was connectedness. You need to feel connected to people around you, to family, to friends, potentially to coworkers. The second was competence. You need to have a sense of mastery. You need to feel like you're respected. You need to feel like you're expert in something and that people seek you out for this. And then the third is autonomy. We need to have autonomy in our lives. We need to control our time. We need to control what we choose to exert our efforts on. And you need all three of these pieces in order to lead a truly rewarding life. So when Cal Newport talks about a good way to go out and decide what you want to do for a living, to find a job, find a career, he recommends you start with curiosity, that you find things that intrigue you, things that interest you, and start there. He also talks about the fact that you're going to start in an entry-level job, and entry-level jobs, almost by their nature, do not provide you with a sense of competence, a sense of respect, a sense of people are coming to you and looking to you to be the expert. Of course not. You're in an entry-level job, so nobody is going to do that. And secondly, you very rarely get much autonomy in an entry-level job. First of all, you probably don't get autonomy in your day-to-day work. Somebody's telling you what to work on, when to work on it, how to work on it, what the objectives are, and they're constantly evaluating you. So the fact is, most entry-level jobs kind of suck. So Newport talks about building what he calls career capital. And career capital, he says, is developed by or gained by developing what he calls rare and valuable skills. So this means that you get the job, you start working at the job, you start building expertise, you start building a base of something that you're excited about and that people are coming to you and you're becoming the expert on. And before you know it, you're feeling pretty good about your job. And by the way, the more important you become, the more expert you become, the more valuable you become to your employer, the more autonomy you get. So that's one aspect of how to think about a career. But for many people, myself included, it wasn't enough. Fact is, I think there are some people, myself included, who are just not cut out for working for somebody, or not cut out for having most jobs and really getting charged up about them. The fact is I've had very good jobs in my life and pretty much was never happy in them. So I started out many years ago developing software, was very good at it, and also had a fair amount of people skills. So I worked up the organization because that's what you do. And I ended up as vice president, making more money than I can imagine. And I was unhappy. So I quit my job and started building houses. So there's all kinds of, like exploration you need to do about what's important to you, and to not get locked into one path if you're not happy on that path. So this gets to the next part of what I think is absolutely critical in terms of designing a life that's going to be rewarding, designing a life that you're going to be happy in, and that's learning who you are, learning what's important to you. So there are things I could have known very early in my career that I didn't really want to know because it was going to be a lot of work to change them. Now that's something that it would have been great if I'd figured it out 20 years before I did. And I could have, if I'd done enough introspection. What's important to you in a life is building a foundation in a small community important to you? Is your church important to you? Is your family important to you? Is building a family important to you? Are certain level of material things important to you? Material things are important to us all. It's just a question of what level you need to achieve to bring yourself happiness. So there's no answer to this for everyone. Everyone is different. It really depends upon what you want, what you need, and it's important that you think about these things and figure out, what do you want in your life? If you don't have a job yet, if you're in college, if you're just starting out in your career, it's super important because you have all the runway in the world in front of you. You can make whatever changes you want. You could change careers. If you're later in your career, it's more difficult, but it's not impossible. I did it. I went from developing software or building software to building houses. So it's possible. The only thing I would say is, if you're going to make a change like that, if you're going to make a jump like that, you need a plan, and you need a good plan, and you need to be honest with yourself, and you need to understand what your contingencies are, and what your fallbacks are, and what the downsides are if, like, the shit hits the fan. Whatever your plan is, there's a technique that can help you figure out, is it a good plan? Is it an actionable plan? Is it something that's actually going to work? It's called pre-morteming. You know what a post-mortem is after a big project fails, a lot of times organizations will come in and conduct a post-mortem, and they'll figure out what went wrong. And it's kind of too late to fix it, so not really necessarily that great of an idea. But a pre-mortem is based on the same idea. And what you do in a pre-mortem is you pretend that your plan has been executed, and you pretend that it's now a year or 2 or 5, however long down the road, whatever you think is most appropriate, and you imagine the plan has failed spectacularly. I mean, as bad as it could possibly fail. And you develop plausible scenarios as to how that happened. What happened? What realistic, reasonable thing occurred that caused my plan to crash and burn the way that it did? And it gives you insight into the kinds of things that can actually go wrong with your plan. A lot of times when we are making plans, it's human nature to not think in terms of what can go wrong. Instead, we're thinking about, like, oh, maybe that, oh, we'll fix it this way, and oh, we can make it better here, and we can improve it by doing this. And you're not really immersed in the idea of the plan failing. But if you're taking a big risk, and if what you're talking about is developing a plan for how you're going to live the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years of your life, that's taking a pretty big risk if you do it wrong. Imagine you've taken the risk and it's failed, and now you imagine what went wrong, and that allows you to give a much more sober assessment of how reasonable and realistic your plan is. To circle back, you are not going to love your job. You might be one of that 1% of people that I ask the question to, and they do love their job. If you are, good for you. But the 99% of the others of you, even though you want to, even though you think you'll find something you love, you won't. You're going to find yourself dissatisfied, and to the extent you focus on trying to find something you love, it's going to compromise other areas of your life. All right, if you stuck around this far, wow, hats off to you. And thank you very much. I really appreciate it. If you could like, I'd really appreciate that. I'm a small new channel. That helps a lot. If you could subscribe, even better. And if you could leave a comment, everyone tells me it helps the algorithm. So thank you again. And till next time, peace out.